thanks to all of you for coming over. You know, I recognize you have a choice, and I'm glad you guys chose to come in and join us for our session. So, as Syed mentioned, you know, my background, I'm a G-logger, right? When Jim showed that slide earlier of those 25 years, I sort of felt old because I witnessed all of that along the way, right? And so, what did we learn over those last 25 years implementing? Kind of good and bad. If you're just starting the journey or you're well on your way, I think there might be something in here for you. So, we entitled it Optimizing Your Cloud Deployment Strategy. And I do have a co-host today, so I'll briefly introduce myself. Syed touched on a little bit. I'll touch on a little bit more, then I'm going to pass it to Avery. So as Syed mentioned, I'm a G-logger. I joined in September '99, kind of lived through the whole process, through the Oracle acquisition, and then I wanted to go back and be part of a boutique and bring my team with me. I started the practice at Inspirage. We got acquired and went through the acquisition process again at Accenture. And I went, about 7 months ago, I joined GoSaaS. GoSaaS, we're independently funded. We're going to stay that way. It's in our DNA, so hopefully I don't go through that process again. I'm very happy here to be with Avery.
My name is Avery DeMar. I am technically the VP of Sales and Marketing, but really my background, I spent 17 years in semiconductors working through as an engineer into owning roadmaps and business processes across data management, PLM, and overall governance of data as it works through the system. And then I spent 8 years actually as a technical sales consultant at Oracle. So I am new to logistics, but built into our DNA of, as Bob put it, right, at GoSaaS, it's a little bit different, right? We come from not just a technical strong point, but from industry level knowledge, right, and leveraging those pieces, as well as then being able to understand the technology, hence my solution engineering at Oracle, and then now here working with clients such as yourselves and helping your journeys, right? We've done this with a number of our clients at looking a more holistic approach. And while we're here talking about logistics, our ability to expand beyond logistics and see the larger picture, because we're 100% Oracle across that piece, is very unique. So.
Yeah, that's right. So I have a few slides just in the beginning to touch on who we are as GoSaaS. Avery just touched on a little bit because GoSaaS is a new name to the community here, so we thought we'd do that, then we get to the feature presentation. So who is GoSaaS, right? I figured I'd start with a picture, right? If you have some faces that more personalizes the company a little bit. I think Avery has the goaltender jersey on in this picture.
Yeah, here it is.
Also, we have goats, right? If you've seen Avery walking around with a goat, he has a goat right there. Maybe just tell the story about the goat for a moment.
So really the goat has two versions, right? So in the United States, we use the term goat as the greatest of all time, right? So we started GoSaaS really with an emphasis on PLM. We became one of the most respected PLM deployment opportunities. And when we looked at increasing, our clients were constantly trying to solve bigger and bigger questions with bigger and bigger answers. And we had clients come up to us and say, can you do more? Right? Can you go into logistics? Can you go into supply planning? Can you get into order management? Can you even do our ERP implementations? And the answer was always no, because we really wanted to stay in our lane, I would say, in the PLM trenches. What we really rapidly realized is that data governance, that ability to pass that information through and solve clients at a bigger problem is what was the heart of our business. And so the GOAT really represents our objective and methodology, hence why we brought on Hart, right? An original G-logger. We've brought on Eric Rosenberg, another original G-logger, right? We didn't want to start with, hey, we're going to start a small practice and we're going to slowly build it up, right? We brought in the best, the GOATs in that area to bring them back, right? We wanted to have that emphasis and rely on that so that we could really solve our partners' problems as we're working with them through the pieces.
Great, thank you. So as a company, we are global. We're based in the U.S. You can probably tell from our accents, but we do have a global presence. We're going to be looking to establish a footprint here more in EMEA in the coming months, and so we'll have more of a localization feel than we do today. As Avery said, our color scheme's all red. All we do is Oracle. We started in 2018 in PLM. That's our roots. That's Avery's roots, right? We added analytics. We added HCM. We added ERP. We've added SCM. And in the last 7 months, we added logistics really to offer the full suite. We also go across with integrations with OIC. We have extensibility with PaaS-based solutions, as well as Redwood. And we do things with management consulting, with change management, and things like that.
And I just want to point out here, as Bob said, right, analytics, right? You just heard from Jim about the shift in the analytics from OAS, right, into Oracle Analytics Cloud, and how's that going to affect you and leverage that. So that is a big part of solving those larger problems that we at GoSaaS have really tried to do, to see the holistic picture and not as individual problems.
Yeah, that's right. So just quickly, we do go deep. Avery just covered it on OTM, GTM, and WMS. I put logistics network modeling off to the side just to give it a little bit more love and attention, right? We've created some offerings around that. It's an awesome, cool sandbox to really leverage some what if with OTM, so wanted to draw attention to that. We also go deep on SCM, ERP capabilities. You can see the depth of the order cache, supply chain planning, procurement, and the supply chain execution suite. What's our roadmap? So we've been around since 2018. Where do we want to go? What do we want to be? Well, you can see for the next 5 years, a lot of our rollout is related to geography, getting a better presence here in EMEA, getting a deeper presence in APAC. But really what I want to highlight, what's our goal in 5 years? It's a mouthful, to be the largest, most awarded independent Oracle SI. So we want to remain independent. It allows us to be nimble and flexible and remain who we are and be as responsive as we possibly can be. We're self-funded, and that's how we're going to stick to it going forward. A quick slide on the industries and some of the customers that we work with. I want to plug one more thing, and then we're going to start the real presentation, is we do have a monthly webinar series with Oracle, right? This conference is awesome. You learn so much at it, but then you go away. It's like, well, next time everyone gets together is in Minneapolis. Well, how can you stay connected? We're doing something with Oracle. They're co-hosting with it. We do a monthly webinar. Every other month we do OTM. In the odd months we do WMS. So we just did one about a week or so ago. Chris Peckham co-hosted it with us about on-prem migrations to the cloud. We've done one on logistics network modeling. We've done one on workbenches. We did one on inbound features in WMS where Robbie Espinoza is co-hosting from Oracle. We have one coming up in April on outbound features. We have a lot of things coming there. The past ones, if you missed them, you weren't even aware of them, they're all on our website. You can check them out. If you're interested in participating in them going forward, just let me know and I can pass that info on to you. So let's talk about cloud. Before we get to cloud, we'll remember where we used to be, and Jim touched on this a little bit in our presentation. You know, I'm a G-logger, so I kind of, I apologize for that. For some reason, it switched to the laptops. It's not showing perfectly. But what were the highlights when we were on-prem? Well, Jim had a hardware sizing document that we all used to start a project. And that was sort of the Bible that a customer used to figure out what hardware they need based on their volumes and things like that. There was a procurement exercise to go through and procure that hardware. I had folks on my team back then. Their whole job was to just help set up their hardware and do software installation, right? And then once we had it up and going, there was the whole access, right? Oftentimes as consultants, we were issued laptops by the customer to get remote access, or even severe cases, we had to do all our work on site, a lot of time travel, a lot of expense on travel, that sort of thing. And then there were upgrades. Upgrades, I think the icon was a little bit appropriate. It was kind of its own project in itself, sort of a mini project. And customers back then sort of had the attitude, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? You know, typically that we'd work really hard to get somebody live, we'd all celebrate, and they'd kind of stop. And if they did do an upgrade, it would be because they had to. They had to get current on a release, there were certain features that they need, but customers didn't take advantage of all the new stuff. Like Jim showed on that slide, there's a whole bunch of stuff from an R&D perspective. They are pouring into these releases. Chris Peckham told me, and I checked Jim's math, it's about right, you know, Oracle in cloud comes up with about 200 new features in those quarterly releases a year, right? And not enough folks take advantage of them. That's part of why we do that webinar series. We want the webinar to be, you hang up the phone, and I want to go try this. This is in your environment. You could take advantage of it immediately. So if you're just starting on your cloud journey, what should you think about? What should you plan for? And a common pitfall, and Avery quoted Eric Rosenblum. He likes to use the phrase sometimes we come across a customer that they bought the Ferrari, which is G-Log, but they're OTM, but they're only using a cigarette lighter, right? And what do I mean by that? I'll come back around to it in a second. I'll give you an analogy, right? You go to the doctor and your knee hurts, right? And a good doctor won't just give you a pill for your knee. He'll look at it more holistic and say, well, you're out of alignment in your back, or you have arch support issues or whatever. He's going to look at you more broadly and figure out a future plan to go forward. Otherwise, you're going to come back 6 weeks later with the same pain. We definitely, early in a project and early in a sales cycle, want to identify those pain points. but we really want to work with you to articulate what's your overall future vision and have a clear and crisp vision that's not limited to those specific pain points you have today. And because what we want to do is avoid the situation where you take that pain that you have today and you're just repeating the same business processes that you already had. Maybe you're on better technology, but you're not fully taking advantage of those features, right? And so how do you go about that? You can say, look, all I know today is I have this pain. You know, how do I figure out what that future vision should be? How do I uncover that epiphany, right? Well, first and foremost, you can talk to consultants like us, right? We can certainly give you advice and things like that, but the best ideas come from you guys. And the best ideas can come from a conference like this, right? When you grew up as a kid, your mom always said, don't talk to strangers, right? At a conference like this, I encourage you to talk to strangers, right? Build your own network. And oftentimes we start working with customers early on. They say, hey, you know what? I want to talk to a customer that's in my industry, chemical, retail, industrial manufacturing, whatever it is, right? And it's like, well, wait, transportation is horizontal. The business problem that you're solving stretches across industries. So I encourage you, as you're here over this next day and a half, is to talk to folks across all industries. What you'll find is they're solving the same business problem, or they have already solved that business problem. You also want to kind of meet up with folks that are farther along with the journey and can share lessons learned. And I also encourage is when you wrap up the conference, is you don't shake hands and walk away and that's it and say, hey, I'll see you in Minneapolis maybe. Keep that dialogue going, right? It's always great to talk to consultants, but we're not going to be with you forever, right? You want to have these relationships with existing customers. And there's other ways to do it, right? Be active in the community. If you're new to OTM, GTM, and WMS, I've only done this for 25 years, but my experience is that outside of it, this is pretty unique, this community. Especially if you go to Minneapolis, it's an even bigger conference. The customers are very willing to share with one another. And so join the board, right? Be a part of the SIG board. You can see what the group does here. They put a lot of effort into it. Present case studies. Share your story at an event like this. What it does, it gets your name out, but also gets the project out, and you'll establish contacts. Also, I encourage you to just be a reference for Oracle. That's hard. Some people always don't want to be references, but then you're also building your own network. You're understanding what other people are looking for, and you can keep those connections as you go forward. What about when you pick an SI? What should you look out for? First and foremost, you should recognize your own constraints. And what do I mean by that? What are your critical dates? What are your high priority requirements? What are your internal staffing concerns? Well, my IT team is really short-staffed. They have bandwidth constraints, or if my business users can only do certain things, or they're spread out globally, whatever it may be, you've got to kind of look in the mirror and see who you really are. And what's worked well in the past? Has a big bang worked well in the past? A rollout? What have failed projects meant to your company, right? How can we avoid that? All those things you got to kind of think and keep in mind when you're looking at an SI. And I get it, pricing is the most important thing, and we hear that again and again, but pricing doesn't necessarily guarantee success on a project. And what's important is certainly the capabilities of the SI, like they can show a NASCAR slide, they've done all these great projects, but what you also need is great chemistry, right? You need chemistry with those individuals that you wake up in the morning, you're excited about the work you're doing, but the individuals you're working with. These are long-term projects, 6 months, a year, you're with these individuals. You've got to build that bond and chemistry. Make sure you meet the consultants before they start the project, right? Company may sell you and they've done all this great stuff, but are those the people that are going to go on your project? Do they have that same type of experience, right? Are time zones an issue? Have you talked to their executive leadership? Do they share the same priority as you do? I certainly encourage you to start steering committees early in the process so you're building that relationship. Ask them what's required of you before you sign up, right? And know what you're on the hook for from your side, right? The nice thing with cloud projects is the remote access, right? We're not having to get laptops. We're not even really having to go on site as much anymore. So there's a time and cost savings. But what does that mean to you? How is your company built? Are you guys all in the same office? It's important to be in the same office. Are you remote? What about onshore and offshore models? Who are you as a company should really dictate what the match is from an SI. And methodology is important, whether you're more familiar with waterfall or agile or even a hybrid. We tend to kind of more follow a hybrid model where, agile is good, especially for folks that have familiarity with it. We just can't tend to always move as fast as we like on a projects. We've kind of moved to a little bit more of a hybrid model, but everybody seems to have their own preference for that. Global design is important. You'll hear that quite a bit, or a phase 0. It just gives you a chance before you start running off on the project is to drill down and really understand all phases and have much more of an executable plan, certainly for phase 1, but also have more lined up here for phase 2 and beyond. It's also an opportunity if you're going to do multiple lines of business to figure out, are we going to standardize those processes across, or each line of business different? We don't get down to those level of details always in a sales cycle, and it's important. What about just your overall philosophy? Are you going to do a transformational type project where you're going to rip it all apart and really put in something new from a business standpoint? Or are you looking to do more rapid value, which is very tactical? Or again, a hybrid of both, which is what we tend to do, take the benefits of rapid value, but still go after those transformational type opportunities. Oop, that's the wrong one. Whoop, I skipped a slide. Nope, I thought I did. No, I didn't. Okay, so you picked your SI, right? Before you start a project, there's homework to do. And once you picked your SI, I encourage you to ask that SI for a checklist for those things that you need to get lined up so you as an organization are fully prepared, right? One is getting the right resources. And when you're picking your resources for a project on your end, don't just pick the people that are available. This project is important to your organization. Pick the right people for a project, people that have the right bandwidth and also the right skill sets. That's super important, and we at SI can only do so much to work around that. This is especially true with OTM, but cleansing data is very important. Understand what data is required to be loaded into the product. What's the state of your data today? What needs to be done in advance so that doesn't become a problem? Across all 3 applications, there are often third-party products required, whether it's in WMS with the printers and the handheld devices, with OTM, with SMC3, and distance-based packages. There's other stuff you're going to need. Well, what is it, right? You're not going to have to go through that whole procurement process, but there is, and it's a very light process, that whole Oracle provisioning process. Understand the timing of when you're going to do that and plan that accordingly. Change management, right? Even if you're doing a very tactical project where, hey, we're going to put something in 4 months, we're going to solve this problem, you have to recognize what the impact is to your own business and your users. The users that you have are the ultimate customer of ours, and what's the impact on them? And let's make sure we get them on board, that we don't just drop this on them at the very end. Work with that SI to build a detailed executable plan, right? That you're comfortable with, that fits the needs of your company, that fits the bandwidth of your organization as well. Integration is always something that sets us back, right? Oftentimes, the customer is short-staffed on the IT side, they're not prepared, they sign up for it, and that catches us. So how can we avoid that? Certainly meeting with, if you are going to own that piece, meeting with your IT team from an integration side, making sure they know what they need to sign up for, and that work is accurately reflected in the plan that everybody supports. Once we're underway in the project, what's the recipe for success? I kind of boiled it down into 3 buckets: communication, ownership, and reality. And with communication, I touched on this a little earlier, is the steering committee, right? Oftentimes all projects have a steering committee, and I get that, but it's not often that Oracle and the SI are included in part of that. And I certainly encourage you to do that. I certainly encourage you to start steering committees at the very beginning of the project, right? Because you're going to hit bumps and issues. Don't wait to get that group together when things are bumpy. Start it early on. The other thing, too, is that what we've seen is, well, we're going to do one status report, right? I would encourage status reports from both the SI as well as your own project manager, because sometimes you're going to see different perspectives on that. Sometimes internally what we've seen is customers are afraid to list anything but green status, right? No yellow, no red, and issues linger underneath, that sort of thing, and it doesn't get escalated till it's really becomes a problem. Ownership is important top to bottom on the project, and I mean that at 2 levels. It's important that everybody on the team, from the executives that are assigned and sponsoring the project to the low-level resources, they all feel like they're a part of something, right? But at the same time, ownership also needs to be recognized from the customer that someday we're not going to be there. Your SI is not going to be there. This is your project. You own this. And not only are we going to implement for you, but how are we going to get you in a spot to teach them how to fish where you can be independent and self-sustaining on this, all right? And then there's reality, right? The reality is making sure that we kind of go with a theme aggressive but doable on our timelines, but coming up with timelines that everybody supports And if there are problems, if there are risks, if there are concerns, that everybody within the project team on both sides feels empowered to raise those issues up, that they're not buried again where they come too late to chase down. So you're live, you're happy, we've celebrated. Let's talk about, you got something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to go back one to this slide, communication, ownership, and reality, right? One of the things that we fundamentally believe with is sitting down with those clients and driving those objectives, right? So day before yesterday, I went to Eindhoven because a project manager on a current project that I'm working with, we were a little bit off schedule, right? The communication from the project managers on either side wasn't there. So we sat down and we had that executive alignment, right? And we defined the ownership and a catch-up plan. And then we looked at it realistically and said, hey, how are we going to drive this, right? And that didn't come from the individual level, that came through that executive alignment, right? And I think that's where Bob and I's real commitment to being there on the ground, right? Great, show up in Eindhoven for a day, have a discussion face-to-face over a couple of hours, and then go through and have a mitigation plan, and then get back on track. To me, that's the commitment that we're looking at. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. All right, so post-go live. Ensuring a smooth landing. First and foremost is project readiness, right? The obvious. Make sure everybody feels like they're on board and ready to go. And certainly that ties in with the user comfort level. The users aren't ready. Let's make sure we address their concerns. From a production support and managed services, you got to figure out that managed services strategy well before you go live. Are you guys going to own it? Is the SI going to own it? Is somebody else going to own it? You know, what we recommend if we get involved with managed services, that at least 6 weeks prior, that those individuals are involved in the project. Or sometimes what we do is we keep the individuals all the way through, and the offshore team acts as managed services, the implementation team. But the bottom line is we need that transition to happen very early. What we also look to do, and we recommend, is the implementation team sticks around, right, for a period of time. It's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it may be, and that there's coverage available on all shifts of your business. And then finally, now all of a sudden you're in production, engaging with Oracle support. A lot of times during the project, the implementation team will be logging tickets. How do you log tickets? What's a Sev 1? How does a Sev 1 work in that whole process? So I touched on earlier, what was life back a number of years ago here on on-prem? It's very different with cloud, and it's much smoother on cloud, right? So we don't have that whole hardware sizing exercise and procurement. It starts immediately with provisioning. And with Oracle, provisioning happens in 2 to 3 days, right? You signal when, and it starts, right? Remote access, and oh boy, we have the laptops and access issues. That's gone, right? We have the internet, we have single sign-on, and we're good to go, right? We're leveraging much more in the way of rapid value tools and templates because the software's there to really focus on delivering value as quickly as possible and standing it up as quickly as possible. We talked a little bit about those quarterly releases. And then coming along, and what I believe the process, the way it works is it goes into your test environment, you've got a period of time to test it, and then Oracle will migrate it to your production. But even the most important part is there's really an opportunity with those quarter releases to tap into those new features, right? And increasing your benefit, increasing your ROI, increasing your footprint. And what we recommend on the quarterly releases is one is just assign internal owner, right? Jim touched on it with all the documentation. Oracle produces really good help, right? Documentation is excellent. Somebody should be combing through that stuff and saying, "Oh, these things are things that maybe we could use, right? And these are things that we really need to learn about and educate yourself on those capabilities." And when that release comes along, try them in your test environment, right? Play around with them a little bit and see what you think, and then make that decision about making the leap. And of course, you got to factor in regression testing. You know, there's all sorts of tools and things like that out there that you can use. Of course, manual is an option as well. And what we recommend with the testing for post-production support is leveraging those same test scripts and things that we use during UAT, right? Obviously, they'd evolve a little bit if you add new features, but they're important, and I already touched on Oracle in terms of the timing of the quarter release into test versus production. I've got a few key takeaways in wrap up. One is just making sure to leverage all that goes into the capabilities of that Ferrari, right? And there's a lot there. And what we've seen again and again with customers is they don't fully tap into it, and there's more opportunity. And you guys could, this isn't a selling of SIs, you guys can do a lot of this yourselves, right? Establish a plan for independence, right? Learn, know what you need to do, especially with quarterly patches. You're weaning yourself off of SIs, and you guys are owning this. Join the ecosystem and be visible, right? There are conferences like this in Asia. There's one, obviously Europe, and then in the U.S. There's monthly webinar series. I think the SIG also does a webinar. There are all sorts of ways that you can be the cloud world. There are all sorts of ways to be present, involved in that in the ecosystem. And don't be afraid to share your story, right? Again, it's a great way to get your name out there, make yourself visible, but get your story out so then you can get aid with that networking, and then be all over those quarter releases. Don't say, oh geez, here it comes again, right? Embrace them, right? Embrace the functionality that's there in them, and never stop, right? This thing's a fluid thing. Continue to expand your footprint.
And I'm just going to reemphasize number 1 and number 5, right? You, as you move to the cloud, right, as Jim said, right, the OTM migration is part of that. When you move to the cloud, there's a fundamental sense, and we've retouched on this topic multiple times here, that you're one and done. Those quarterly releases, the updates, the enhancements, if you truly want your Ferrari to have the new capabilities, you need the new pieces in you. Define your team, make sure your team is enabled to be able to look at those and test them and push them out, right? There's no reason to buy the cigarette lighter if that's all you're going to use and think of it as such. It's a fundamental change for you and your business, but it's a fundamental change for the ultimate progress of your business, right? Rather than deploying, coming back to it 5 years later, you're gonna be old, rusted, etc. Keep it always up to date, so.
Thank you. I think that's it.